I immediately had a red flag go off my mind. I was like, that's not true. That was released in March.
On August 23rd, a pop culture nostalgia account called Sleeping on Gems posted that exactly 24 years ago, Britney Spears made her debut with Baby One More Time. The post got tens of thousands of views. But here's the thing. Britney Spears' actual debut of that song was October 23rd, 1998. And the album, which was also titled Baby One More Time, was released January 12th, 1999. None of these dates are even close to August 3rd. So what happened here? Well, there's a growing market of pop culture nostalgia accounts on Twitter that are falsifying their posts for a payout, giving rise to massive amounts of misinformation and rewriting pop culture history. Coleman Spilde is an entertainment critic and culture writer. He wrote a piece for Slate called Why Those Big Pop Culture Accounts Are Lying to You About Beyonce, Britney Spears, and More. Coleman, welcome to Power User.
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here.
So you wrote this great story for Slate about these accounts that you called nostalgia dealers and kind of how they promote misinformation about pop culture. To get things started, can you tell me a little bit about who nostalgia dealers are online and how these accounts work?
The nostalgia dealers, as I've sort of referred to them, are any offshoots of, let's say, really large accounts that you see in your feed all the time, like Pop Crave or Pop Base. These accounts that have become really prolific and really followed in sort of like news sources of their own. And we've seen accounts that have become offshoots of those that also have verified badges. So you've got Pop Tings and Purple Base, and then it has sort of watered itself down into these nostalgia accounts, which also are verified accounts that post old music videos and old award show acceptance speeches and quote unquote iconic moments from celebrities and artists of the past. And those are what I would refer to as the main offenders here, if you will.
Yeah, I feel like since Elon took over Twitter, my entire feed is these accounts. Like and they're all like these really long threads where it's like 50 iconic pop culture moments.
It's so funny too, because it's like the weird thing about Twitter now is that every time you get back onto it, it reloads you onto the For You page, which then automatically resets itself. And so whatever algorithm that you have developed for yourself and your search habits, it's pulling up these things and thinking that you want to see them. But it's like, I don't actually know that I care so much that however many years ago, this was the day that Christina Aguilera released Dirty.
I will say, I love the ones that post the old music videos.
I do fall victim to that a lot myself, so I will say.
Well, so you wrote about how these accounts are increasingly warping pop culture history by spreading misinformation. I actually never even considered that some of these things might not be true. So I can't even imagine the amount of misinformation I've been drinking down. But when did you start to notice this? And tell me a little bit about what's going on.
Yeah, well, that's sort of the funny thing about these accounts is that they operate so low key and under the radar that you don't necessarily understand that what you're consuming might not be the whole truth, or it might be sort of just left of center from the truth. I happened to notice this one day at the beginning of August when I was scrolling through Twitter, and I saw this one account called Sleepin' on Gems posting about how 14 years ago or some random number, it was the day that Lady Gaga and Beyonce released the Telephone video. And as an ardent Gaga fan in my teenage years, I immediately kind of just had a red flag go off my mind. I was like, that's not true. That was released in March. And so it kind of followed a similar pattern of things that I've seen lately with these nostalgia accounts and pop culture accounts of posting things that sort of seem like they might be true, but no one really wants to fact check them to get the dates right or wants to make sure that it's completely accurate. And so I had gone to their feed to check out the rest of what they were been posting, and it was the same sort of thing. It's, this person released this video or this song how many years ago? And all of them were pretty much untrue.
Why don't they just actually choose correct anniversaries for things?
Yeah,
is that just too much work?
That's the funny thing is I think that a lot of the development of these accounts is they've realized that they're able to make, not necessarily a sizable paycheck, but a decent sized payout for the amount of work that it takes to find a clip that's already embedded into the site, copy and paste that link, and posted for an erroneous number of years ago that the music video might have come out.
Yeah, I also feel like them, this is just my theory, them almost making up different anniversaries probably allows them to sort of like capitalize on the attention in a way that they couldn't if it was the actual anniversary because other people would be talking
Mhm.
about it.
Yeah, definitely. It's if people are talking about it and it's more proliferated in your feed, then it's going to get lost under the water of all these other accounts talking about the actual anniversary. And I think that it's just easier for these accounts to maybe look up, say, how many years ago was 2001? And then we can just throw the general date up there. And it makes it seem like that was the day that the song came out 23 years ago or something like that. But it's more like the song came out 23 years ago, sometime in that year. It was months and months away from the actual date that you're seeing the tweet that they posted.
Yeah. So you mentioned, that these accounts can make money, and I want to talk about the business incentives and kind of why Twitter is just becoming a factory for this type of content.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about how the business model for Twitter has changed in recent years under Elon and how it's facilitating the rise of these types of accounts.
It seems so recent that, Twitter has become X and implemented all of these different policies and lets, users get paid for the amount of engagement that they have on these posts. But it by allowing all of these things and by sort of making this blue check, this ideal thing that was once, an indicator of someone who is giving you information that you could trust, it has now become a very twisted thing because it's anyone can have it as long as they're able to pay the monthly price for X premium. So these accounts are now able to sign up for X premium and drive engagement through the posts that they're making and get a payout from probably between $100 to $350 a month, depending on how much engagement they're able to farm from these posts that they're putting out.
Yeah. And I want to talk about the content a little bit more and the effects of it, because I feel like obviously when we think of fake news and misinformation, most of us think of like political things or serious stuff.
Mhm.
But fake pop culture news is exploding online. You mentioned this one tweet by this account at the Pop Tings from January 2023, where they posted the house where the music video for Miley Cyrus's Flowers was recorded was previously used by Liam Hemsworth to cheat on Miley with more than 14 women while they were married. I believe that this is completely made up, but this tweet got tens of millions of views. And I think I might have believed it. Can you talk a little bit about like why these things are so easy to believe? And do you know how they're coming up with these pop culture narratives?
The funny thing about these accounts and that tweet in particular is that it reflects how insidious these things are and that they are just maybe believable enough that someone could very easily scroll past one of these pieces of completely unsourced information, see that it's coming from an account with a blue check on it, and just believe it, and then take it out into their everyday life or remember it for the next time that they hear that song, or they're having a conversation about that song with a friend at a bar, and they say, oh my God, did you know that this was the case with the video? And the funny thing about that tweet in particular is that it is believable because the meaning of Flowers as a song is about Miley's independence and her freedom from that marriage. And also, it was released a day before Liam Hemsworth's birthday. So that kind of gives a little bit of extra credibility to these just slightly or more egregiously faked tweets that you might see. There was another tweet that was about the same video that said that she was wearing the suit jacket that he wore to one of the Avengers premieres where he mouthed at her to behave on the red carpet. And that was also entirely untrue too. It was like she was wearing like a brand new Saint Laurent suit and he was wearing some other designer. And people were just able to easily conflate the two because they look similar enough that people would believe it. And also, I mean, this comes a lot of the time from stan accounts and fan accounts that want their favorite idol to do so well that they're willing to send in information and drops and ideas to these pop culture accounts that might not weed out the truth from inaccuracies so vehemently.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about that relationship between stan accounts because I feel like they often, if the rumor is positive, amplify this type of content across platforms. Like it gets syndicated all over Instagram, all over
Mhm.
TikTok. It's repeated. And we know also that celebrity PR teams often plant rumors or try to
Yeah.
smear other people. I mean, I remember when the Amber Heard trial was going on, there was so much crazy
Yeah.
stuff happening behind the scenes of these lawyers from certain sides, really Depp's side, sort of trying to seed information with like content creators on the internet. Is there any evidence that sort of like the celebrity PR machine is playing a role in this stuff? Like, are they trying to gin up attention for her album, or are they
Mhm.
fighting back against any of these rumors related to their clients?
Well, it's funny because sometimes you'll see these rumors start to come out, and then you find out that the celebrities are immediately entering into some sort of litigation over these rumors to get them taken down or get them corrected. But then other times, it seems almost as if it's conveniently timed and believable enough that maybe a celebrity's team or their label might be sending something in. It's funny when I actually spoke with the person who runs the Pop Tings account, who goes by Mo, and he told me that along with fan accounts and stan accounts sending in information and tips, he also said that he's gotten information from labels and rumors from labels to post. So it could be coming, it could be like a call that's coming from inside the house.
That's so crazy.
I,
um,
I mean, I was shocked that he wanted to talk to me at all, but I was glad that he did because a lot of these accounts that I reach out to actually to get any comment from them or to answer any questions either ghosted me or blocked me or did not respond at all. But he actually reached out and wanted to speak to me and to put his defense out there, so to say. So it was actually nice to hear from him on that too.
what would you say to people that are like, okay, this information is ultimately silly, it's harmless. So what if we believe a bunch of fake news about celebrities? I mean, if you go on the Daily Mail, it's basically fan fiction anyway, written about around a bunch of paparazzi photos. So, what is the harm? Like, is this really degrading our information environment that much?
Yeah, I think that is the big question, is because we have always been taught to look at pop culture news and hard news as these completely separate verticals. And a lot of times, especially now in the digital age, everything is really overlapping so much more. And, pop culture is what we consume after a long day to feel better, to take our mind off of things. It's something that we allow into our brains when our brains are the most comfortable and when we're most accepting into information because we're treating it as almost this sort of fluffy thing. But it's the thing that we consume in our everyday lives. It's the music that we listen to on the train. It's the movies that comfort us. It's these albums that we hold near and dear to us. So if we start to accept misinformation that trickles out alongside these things, or about past pop culture, then it starts to slowly alter our view of the past and the present and the future of pop culture as well.
I think that's so interesting and kind of disturbing because I feel like pop culture, as you mentioned, it's sort of constantly seen as this like fluffy thing, but
Mhm.
pop culture figures can go on to play major roles in politics. And I
Yeah.
feel like pop culture just invades every other aspect of culture. And
Mhm.
if we start to also just not care about like pop culture history, it seems like that could be a slippery slope too, where we just
Yeah.
stop caring so much about history. I mean, I would say a lot of nostalgia accounts that are just sort of pop culture accounts are really adjacent to the history accounts like
Mhm.
Uberfacts or history, whatever. And they've always kind of put out misinformation, but it seems to be getting worse, especially under Elon.
Yeah, definitely. It's not a short jump from consuming pop culture and then believing misinformation about pop culture. And it's because we hold that so near and dear to us and we let it into our lives in such an intimate way. We consume it in our homes to feel better about our lives and better about the state of the world. It's an insidious thing that can go south really quickly. And like you said, we have pop culture figures who become politicians, who become, very public speakers who have a lot of influence on this world, especially now when the gap between celebrity and civilian is so much smaller because we're all plopped onto the same digital networks and we all have access to these things all the time. And as a professional critic, I've sort of made it my job and my life to look really closely at these things and to find out exactly why we value them and to find the value in things that people might not think that there's much value in, like pop music or, silly rom-coms. And it turns out that, if you start making up rumors about these things, they can take on a new life of their own and alter history.
Is this only happening on Twitter?
That is a great question. It has really become prolific on Twitter. I have not seen it nearly as much on platforms like Instagram. It was funny, when I was writing the piece, I was looking at all of these nostalgia accounts that are more based on Instagram. And I think with a more visual platform, these accounts are more willing to actually put in the work and tailor their posts correctly. It seems like the Y2K accounts on Instagram or the Indie Sleaze accounts on Instagram or just basic nostalgia accounts, they're the ones who are actually really craving accuracy and wanting to maintain the history as it is and wanting to build their page as sort of like an archive as opposed to a running list of pop culture news or rumors that just gets buried under itself.
I mean, I'm thinking of like the Indie Sleaze account and stuff. Like, it seems like they have a real respect too for the time that they're documenting, or, especially those Y2K accounts as well. Like, I've interviewed teens behind them and they say, like, I love this time, I really feel connected to it. Whereas Twitter, it's just all engagement bait.
Yeah.
Aside from these, blessed teens on Instagram meticulously archiving Y2K and some other nostalgia accounts like that, on that platform, is there anyone else doing the work of archiving pop culture? I mean, are there any sort of wider efforts to ensure that this history is cataloged correctly?
Some, but nothing that is really broad enough to make an impact yet. And, it's tricky because we've seen also things, like the Wayback Machine, which works sometimes, but is sometimes a little bit hard to find your way around. And then the links will still sometimes be broken. And then you've got the Internet Archive trying to provide us all these things for free and all of these historical bits of culture and history and media that are being contested in court and in litigation. And so it seems like there is also this strange fight to not preserve things in the ways that we need to preserve them to have an accurate historical record. Until then, I hope that the Instagram accounts keep going, because they're the ones who are really doing the work and doing the research and have become like their own sort of proto-experts in every field.
All right, Coleman. Well, thanks so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that's the show. You can watch full episodes of Power User on my YouTube channel at Taylor Lorenz. Power User is produced by Travis Larchik and Jelani Carter. Our video editor is Brandon Kiefer. Our executive producer is Zach Mack. Power User is part of the Vox Media Podcast Network. If you like this show, give us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. We'll be back next week with a brand new episode of Power User. And in the meantime, buy a paid subscription to User Magazine.